Welcome to those who are just coming on. Tonight I thought I would, there's a lot of different ways to talk about what we call waking up, awakening out of the small self, if you will, into the deeper I, or, there's so many ways of talking about it. It involves a shift in consciousness and many shifts in consciousness, and most definitely shifts in identified consciousness. How you identify. But tonight I thought maybe I would talk about it from a certain point of view. I'm trying to get this, oh, here we go. Of remembering, reorienting, rewiring, and receiving. And what I'm really actually most interested in is the receiving, but there's the steps to get there, to what I'm speaking about. It's really key, and we've talked about this many times, and I know everybody on this phone call has some sense, their own deep knowing of their deepest nature. A remembering that wakes one up to the reality that we are not just a separate little entity called a me that can be defended and is separate from everything else and separate from our source, separate from divinity, whatever you call that. That's really key. It becomes more and more foundational and important, you might say, to have a very cultivated sense of that. Because even if you wake up to it, you have an experience at a retreat, you're all of a sudden one with everything. There's a sense of all of the, writings and instructions and pointers from the masters. You have the actual sense within consciousness and sensory awareness, and you can't really go back to believing in separation after that. Even if consciousness kind of closes down into a separate sort of feeling, you can't really believe it all that much anymore after an experience like that. But what we tend to do, I think, and what I see is that there's the experience, and then very quickly, sometimes maybe not so quickly, the consciousness begins to orient around what it always is oriented around. And then that just becomes like a spiritual experience that I once had at a given retreat. And it kind of starts fading. It becomes a story. And then the consciousness is just reorienting around its basic conditioned patterns. We all have them. Conditioned consciousness is a reality. I'm sure we all have encountered. Yeah. So the remembering of one's nature, deepest nature, the dissolution of separation, where one cannot really believe that there's separate objects floating around in kind of a soup of space, and there's a me and there's a that and all of that stuff. That can be a way of perceiving even after awakening. That can be a way of perceiving, but it's not the same thing as believing in it fundamentally. See? So the remembering of interbeingness, not that's beyond division. It's beyond division. It's very key. It's the territory of wholeness. But the reorientation towards that remembering, within that remembering, is very important. It's very important. Because we can choose to orient or pay attention to, you might say, give our attention, pay our attention, gift our attention to all kinds of things. And especially right now, right? We're hanging on to these things that are giving us a million different things a day to orient around. I mean, you can orient around all kinds of things, not only just your own conditioned beliefs, but just the conditioned beliefs and pain bodies of all different kinds of people all over the world, and just all of it. It's a decision, really. It's a choice. It's a discipline. It's a practice to orient towards and step in to one's remembering of the deepest nature, because it's really being tested. It's not like we're, in a isolated, cave in the Himalayas, or, something like that. We are, maybe we wish for that, but that's not what's happening. So there's thousands, hundreds of times during the course of one day where one makes a decision, consciously or unconsciously, of what to give attention to and what to orient around. And the more we become aware of this, devote ourselves to it, really. It's a deep devotion. It is a deep devotion to give attention, pay attention, orient around the deepest nature, the true nature, the condition of wholeness. It is an inconvenient, it can feel real inconvenient these days because there's so many positions. There are so many positions that feel so righteous, regardless of what position you're taking on whichever side you're feeling. It's super seductive, is it not? And all of a sudden one is within oppositional orientation. And I understand that, and here comes the rewiring piece, because we really do physiologically, mentally, emotionally rewire when we move into discernment rather than judgment. The nervous system, the emotional system, the mental system is kind of basically wired for judgment: good, bad, me, that, right, wrong, the conditioned reflexive reptilian brain doesn't really have an understanding of how one can stand within integrity and illuminated consciousness and not choose a side. That's an impossibility for this area of the brain and the nervous system. It rewires with the advent of discernment, which is the natural permeation of the remembering of who one actually is. It's a consequence of remembering and then reorienting. So here I am, living life as a me, orienting around all my beliefs and conditions and opinions. ideas, concepts, emotions. There's a waking up out of that, waking up out of the struggle, out of the suffering of that. But then there has to be kind of a reorientation, a commitment, a devotion, a practice to what one has remembered, one's deepest sense of oneself in any given moment, see? Not just in spiritual moments, you know, not just going to church on Sunday, but in the middle of a current event, in the middle of a relational interaction. And as one begins to continue to devote to that through whatever means, you know, here it happens very spontaneously through the open field of listening, silent stillness. Something will arise. It's generally quite surprising because it's not language that I'm typically using as a woman growing up in Eastern Oregon. It'll be something, you know, I know nothing of this situation. Mother, please shine your light. You know, something like that. I don't know. It'll be your own guidance. But the key is that there's the dropping, the letting go, drop it like it's hot, of the belief that you want to have that will come in very strongly saying, me, this is going to keep you safe. This is what's going to keep you safe is if you believe this and you feel this and you stand for this and it's against all of that and it's in opposition to this, and that will feel very safe to the nervous system that hasn't rewired to wholeness, rewired to the true nature, that there's no separateness. It will feel safer to hold a position to that nervous system rather than just drop it. Take residence in the deepest knowing of what one has remembered, orient around it, stand in it, sit down as that, and stop believing, stop conceptualizing. It's not in denial. It can sound like it when I'm speaking. I mean, it's pretty worthless to deny what's actually happening. So if one is scared, one is scared. You can't go into it with, well, I'm not really scared because I am an infinite being evolved, you know, like it doesn't work that way, right? It doesn't work that way. One is scared. The sensory sense of it is there for whatever apparent reason and threat is being perceived. But the belief that that is a fundamental, actual, essential quality of reality, that's what we give away. That's what we give away. We just meet it very purely, very purely. We meet it. This is fear. This is that. This is that. We refrain from that next step, which is, I'm scared because to fill in the blank, you know, and they this and they that and they the other thing and they and they and they and they, them and they and the whole bit. There's a gentleness, there's a kindness and wholeness that is, and capacity beyond our wild imagination. You know, it's a capacity that is not imaginable through judgment and separateness. It's just not. It must be, it has to be lived. And the rewiring, you know, I know that many of you and me and all of us, many of us have been, you know, experienced a lot of the rewiring in the last few years. It doesn't always look like ponies and roses. The rewiring can be real intense. There can be so many times a day even that the fight or flight, judgmental, perceptual response wants to come in and define and conceptualize reality and claim it and then position itself in a stance, either with it or against it. And that rewiring can strangely, very, very strangely, but I've seen it over and over, can feel like grief, like we're giving up something that is essential, like we're giving up life to let go of our positions, to let go of our judgments, to let go of our this is me, you know. It can really feel deeply grievous. I just see it over and over again, even though a person can go along with a dream in their heart for years that please stop this struggle, please put an end to this struggle, can I please, you know, not be struggling. And then when the deep remembering occurs, I guess you might say, or is remembered, and things begin to reorient and rewire, letting go of the struggle can sometimes be the hardest thing. And we'll find all kinds of things, righteous things, to bring it back into an experience. Well, surely they meant letting go of that, but not letting go of this, because this is like a really important thing that I must hang on to, you know? I get it. I get it. Dr. Hawkins always used to say that, you know, moving from judgment to discernment is where a lot of people just kind of decide to get off the path. And Aja would say, moving from personal will to divine will, same thing. Because it just feels too sketchy, as my grandkids would say, too sketchy. You know, like we're abandoning, you know, we're abandoning that which keeps us alive. We've mistaken that whole sense of belief and emotion and struggle and drama and this and that and the other thing for life itself. So as this, we're working with a certain roadmap tonight. I mean, there's many, right? But tonight it's like a remembering, reorienting, rewiring. And as that is intelligent, it's an intelligence. It's an intelligence that it's the intelligence that sprouts a seed, opens a rose, makes a baby from one cell. You know, it's not an intelligence you can pin down and put in a jar and look at for later use. You know, I mean, it's like the great power of that which animates. It's absolute stillness, dynamically moving as absolute love. So we're never going to pin that down as an object, but we can see it in the reflection all the time. But do we orient around it? Do we orient around, you know, the beauty of that intelligence that's everywhere? The sun comes up, the sun goes down, the seeds sprout, the flowers bloom. We wake up to a new day. I mean, the miracle is that anything exists. So as that begins to really permeate, if there's a devotion, let's use that word tonight, a stepping in, a sitting down, a orienting around our deepest knowing, our deepest current, deepest knowing of our own nature, things change. Things change. It's actually a really good sign if things start changing. It may be uncomfortable as hell. For some people, not so much. For some people, radical changes happen. I was one of those, but it doesn't matter much. You can read a little bit about Ani's story in her book, Radical Changes. And I know others of you on this call. I think what happens is that there's still kind of a conditioned way of being that reaches for the old ways of comfort when we get uncomfortable. We get uncomfortable within the shift. We get uncomfortable within the reorientation and the rewiring, and something, it's usually just very unconscious, wants to kind of go back, find that solid ground, do something that made us feel better in the past, believe something, take a stand, get a position, get an identity, get an opinion, whatever it is. Because the uncomfortable, for many of us, and I don't know about all of you, but for many of us, we haven't really been trained, you might say, or introduced to receptivity if we're uncomfortable, to sit back, become open, heart and mind and heart, and allow whatever you call the source to inhabit this vessel, inhabit this form, inhabit and express through and as this beingness. For most of us, that feels uncomfortable. It's not conceptual enough. The mind doesn't have enough to do. I think this is where, a lot of the repetitive practices can come in, because it kind of gives the mind something to do while we are adjusting to the new way. It's original, but it feels new. It's original. It just feels new. It's I find it heartwarming and uplifting these days, because it seems like a lot more, well, Sharon always says energy is streaming onto the planet, but it's available. It's available in a more kind of easier way, I think, in some ways. We're beginning to have that capability and that awareness of, oh, I'm going down that road that has that big hole, and I can, fall in, go around, or I can choose a different road. We're beginning to embody that. Like the practices are available, and the teachers are available, and the Sangha is available, and we can be uncomfortable and meet those deeper, stickier, stuck levels of, like what Eckhart Tolle calls the pain body, or the conditioned unconscious karma, whatever you want to call it. We have the capacity to meet that in kind of a way that is present, allowing, receiving, open, and probably a little bit uncomfortable because it feels so non-conceptual, non-fix. We can't grab onto the fixer, we can't grab onto the healer, we can't grab onto the doer. We can, but it just takes us one more lap around the cul-de-sac of conditioned ways. Receiving. It's actually more like living the condition of receptivity, living as the condition of receptivity. For a while, there's someone receiving, and that's great. All the phases are absolutely fine. One is where one is. But the eventuality is there's a living condition that I, for a couple of years, called responsive immediacy, but it's a living condition of receptivity. The hollow flute, the hollow reed, the instrument of sources, gods, the Godhead, actually, love. I can remember a time when this was really dawning in consciousness here, and the only way I could talk about it was just to go like this. Yes. It was just an overall sense of it. Gradually words have come to try and describe it. It's like I was thinking about this today, just trying to find a metaphor for that kind of eternal free fall and emptiness that is, it's really kind of beyond fear. And I was, envisioning like a waterfall, like a big waterfall, a massive waterfall, one of the big ones is, it's actually a reflection of a big, vast body of water that is having an experience of being a waterfall, right? But if you're just only oriented, only identified to the waterfall, and you only receive your energy from that little piece of the puzzle, and there's no sense of this vast body of water that's actually living the waterfall as the waterfall, there's no capacity to anchor into the reality of the source of the waterfall, then, very quickly the energy starts feeling like a struggle. And how will I keep this waterfall going? And like, what can I do? And where, I need to save water and blah, 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 the whole thing, like spin, spin, spin. It's very understandable from that view. From that view. But it would be like, Niagara Falls having no understanding of Lake Erie. That it is, regardless of whether it feels like it is a vessel of a living condition of receptivity, a vessel of God's love, regardless of whether it feels that or is conscious of it, it is that. That's what it is. And the experience becomes so vastly, unimaginably, inexpressibly different when one lives the individuation from and as the giver, the animator. I use the word love a lot. It's just so different. It's not that one isn't aware of struggles around the globe or struggles within one's own personal, you might call, realm. It's that there is a living of all of that beyond separation and beyond fear. It just doesn't sound possible to the identified, conditioned sense of self. It doesn't sound possible. You can't, we can't see it from there. You just can't. You can't sense it. But we're moving here tonight in this call with this group of people. This is the place to orient. We're gonna hang up here in an hour or so, and we're all gonna be wherever we are, and we might pick this up, and somebody might, who knows what's gonna happen. But satsang, what that word actually means is to tell the truth as a sangha. To speak the truth. And what that means, to speak the truth of who we are. We can run around, spin around, orient around. Each moment will be informed more unconsciously or more consciously, depending on how we're oriented. And it will become more and more obvious what is mine to do in each moment, each obvious next move, as Adya used to say. But when we begin to tell the truth about, like, this is not the truth of who I am, this is not the truth of what reality is. I mean, mirage, illusion, all that kind of stuff gets a very bad rap because it's, to a Western mind, it has this real sense of like denial of like, my story, my life. Let's, we're supposed to stay up on current events and all the rest. And maybe we are. I mean, I don't know. What I am directly experiencing is that love seems to be everywhere all the time. And the overlay of the believing of the believer, the believer in anything other than the truth of who we are brings about a state of disharmony, struggle, and it colors the whole view. It colors the whole view. And so then more belief starts happening at that level of consciousness because the perceptual reality seems to support it. It seems to support the idea that what do they say? There is old age, sickness, and death. It seems to support that. Opposition, hatefulness. But as we practice, become remembered, reoriented, rewired, receptive, we begin to have the view changes. It just changes. It changes right before your eyes. It changes within, without. Pretty soon there is no within, without. And even in a moment of, like here in the condos, here's an example. Here in the condos, my very next door neighbor over here is a lovely man from Chicago, south side of Chicago, Italian Irish fireball. Very much supports a vastly different worldview than what we're all talking about. He yeah, has a lot of belief systems. And there's this struggle, you can watch it happen within him. And on certain days here as well, this struggle of like, he doesn't want to like me and he doesn't want to like Tim. Man, he doesn't want to like us. Oh my God. It just flies in the face of everything he believes. It's just so hard, We're long hair hippies from Oregon, talking about love and kindness. What the hell is going on? And he's fun to have over for dinner. We agree to speak kindly, and it comes in ways like that. Like there's no sense here. I mean, do I want him, as my roommate? No. But there isn't a sense here of needing to stake my claim in his presence, make my point, shove something down his throat. You can see him he'll just come over boiling. He sits over there and watches Fox News day and night. And he wants an outlet, man. And it's like, hey, how's it going? Here's a chocolate chip cookie, Pura Vida, there's the beach, once in a while we've gotten into something that brought a lot of tears here. And he kind of didn't know what to do with that, but he's respectful of it. I don't know how this all is going to happen, but the view, it doesn't feel like a sacrifice or a fearful thing or a irresponsible. What are the other things the ego could say? It doesn't feel like that to be in communion with that appearance of my neighbor. there becomes a cultivated capacity to rest as and tell the truth about what one is and what reality is. And just that's all we have to do is just meet it in that way. And then the natural order of the vast, infinite, eternal wisdom of the inexpressible source, I'm pretty sure knows what it's doing. But there is that piece, right? Of choosing what we are believing, choosing what we're orienting around. Not to beat ourselves up if something goes haywire. These are big times. Things can go off the rails really quickly. I mean, really quickly. That's next moment is the moment, this moment, present moment, best moment, only moment. We're really being asked at this time to live it like that. You know, for many years I've done this. It's like this. It's like a switch. I mean, maybe some of you have had that experience and, you know, I've probably talked it to death, but it was a profound experience that changed my whole world, that changed everything here to witness, experience, whatever you want to say, the whole of reality, nothing. The whole of reality born, everything as one vast wholeness. So this moment, it's become a bumper sticker. It's become a cliche. People don't necessarily know what they're saying when they say it, but it is the truth that it only ever happens right now. So if something goes off the rails, if something goes awry, if there is like a deep sense of trigger into a position, into an opposition, and the opposition feels really good, and you call a friend and you talk about the opposition and da, 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 you know, all this stuff. The next moment, which is very quickly this moment, please cancel all beliefs and misperceptions that stand between this experience and the absolute goodness of God. And then live it as best we can. Remember who bring the sense, the palpable sense that you discovered in a moment of recognition. Bring it into this moment. Orient around it. Feel it, taste it, sense it. I am that I am. Allow the uncomfortableness, if it's there, in the judgy wiring. Recognize it for what it is and say yes to that. Pretty soon, one finds themselves as kind of just a momentary field of receptivity that's individuating, but kind of rarely conceptualizing, only if you really need to. Please cancel all beliefs, all misperceptions, all conditions that stand in between this experience and the absolute goodness of God. I relinquish all beliefs, all misconceptions that stand in between and overlay this experience, come between me and the goodness of God. I relinquish them. A beautiful woman named Kathy Miller, who's a student of Sharon's from the East Coast, came to the Costa Rica retreat, and she read this. She said she heard it at an Aja retreat many years ago, and I just want to close with it. I love it. It's by a woman named Reverend Sapphire Rose, and it's called She Let Go. She let go. Without a thought or a word, she let go. She let go of the fear. She let go of the judgments. She let go of the confluence of opinions swarming around in her head. She let go of the committee of indecision within her. She let go of all the right reasons. Wholly and completely, without hesitation or worry, she just let go. She didn't ask anyone for advice. She didn't read a book on how to let go. She didn't search the scriptures. She just let go. She let go of all the memories that held her back. She let go of all the anxiety that kept her from moving forward. She let go of the planning and all of the calculations about how to do it just right. She didn't promise to let go. She didn't journal about it. She didn't write the projected date in her day timer. She made no public announcement and put no ad in the paper. She didn't check the weather report or read her daily horoscope. She just let go. She didn't analyze whether she should let go. She didn't call her friends to discuss the matter. She didn't do a 5-step spiritual mind treatment. She didn't call the prayer line. She didn't utter one word. She just let go. No one was around when it happened. There was no applause or congratulations. No one thanked her or praised her. No one noticed a thing. Like a leaf falling from a tree, she just let go. There was no effort. There was no struggle. It wasn't good, and it wasn't bad. It was what it was, and it is just that. In the space of letting go, she let it all be. And a small smile came over her face, and a light breeze blew all the way through her, and the sun and the moon shone forevermore. Isn't that one just a treasure?